Lieutenant Geordie LaForge gets into a fight with a turbo lift. Dr. Pulaski is sending medical teams through the access tunnels, and an Enterprise nurse doesn't know what a splint is. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we're doing a review of Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 2, Episode 11, entitled Contagion, written by Steve Gerber and Beth Woods, directed by Joseph L. Scanlon. This was March 18th, 1989, 4 weeks after the previous episode. Nice hiatus there. And we have a very special guest today. What luck. We actually found a real-life Iconian. Thank goodness. It's Dr. Trek, Larry Nemecek. What's up, Larry?
Hey, don't saddle me with that Iconian stuff. Their jury's still out on those guys.
Well, we are extremely thankful to have you on the show because you are one of the champions of Star Trek knowledge, and I think that it will come in very handy for this episode, and the fans are going to love it. Also, a very special thanks, very quickly, everybody, to our good friend Carl Frederickson for sponsoring this entire episode today. Thank you so much, Carl Frederickson, our good buddy that we see at STLV and in the live chat. Anyway, how you guys doing?
Great.
I'm good. I'm good. This was have you announced the episode? Yeah, it's Contagion, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm on the right page. Okay. No.
Thank goodness. Yes, it is Contagion.
This whole thing, because you think Contagion and you think, oh, it's a medical show, it's a medical emergency show, and viral plague.
That's what I thought. Yeah,
and it's viral, but it's but not the way you think. But I remember
it's a computer virus, is what it really is.
Yeah, and here's the thing: this is one of those shows that in the blur of all the episodes, you don't think about it as a big show or a landmark show or episode. And then you get into it. I mean, like I can remember Contagion. Okay, if I'm thinking the right show. Oh, that one. It's the Iconian show. And you go, okay, right. And you move on. And then DS9, went back to the Iconians, and they've even been, mentioned a couple other times. But
can you remind us when and where on Deep Space Nine the Iconians were mentioned? For Carl Frederickson, I know, but.
There was an episode called To the Death, and they actually stumble across an Iconian. Sisko and his team stumble across a Iconian gate, one of these gateways that we see in this episode, and they're worried about the Dominion getting a hold of the technology or others, and they actually use it to get there. And it's also a battle with Jem'Hadar. I think it's the. Oh, I'm doing this off the top of my head. Isn't that the one with the rebel the rogue Jem'Hadar and the good Jem'Hadar?
Right. Well, check this out. I'm just pulling up a cheat sheet here because it's very important. This episode was season 4, episode 23, written by Ira Stephen Bear and Robert Hewitt Wolf, the gold standard, and directed by also the gold standard LeVar Burton. So this was a really big episode that they were mentioning. Really cool.
And so obviously LeVar bought his firsthand knowledge of
right.
Iconians.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I think that since they were like ancients and long dead and their technology hung around, and like makeup didn't have to spend budget to imagine what they look like or didn't look like, So people have had a lot of fun with them. I think the novel writers, I think people referred, there was Tom Paris referred to them on a Voyager episode one time. As a joke, but it's this enigma, so everybody can have fun with it, and it can be danger, or it could be you can stumble across some ancient Iconian technology for a plot. So they're handy. Old dead aliens
Larry,
are handy that way.
It is, and it actually, when I was hearing about them, I was thinking of like Atlantis and the story of Atlantis. I was thinking of also like the ancient Egyptians and their civilization, but really of Atlantis, because it's more of a fairy tale, more of something unseen, where there's really no evidence of it except for writings here and there. But the technology, it's supposedly so advanced that if it falls into the wrong people's hands, in this case the Romulans, they have the ability to strike anywhere. Essentially,
Right.
is that what it is? That what it is?
Yeah. Well, the knock against one of the bits from the Kelvin movies was that long range transporter, and part of the original writing, once they Gene invented the transporter to avoid landing a ship in visual effects, and that cost her every week in a 1966 way of looking at things. And then the transporter, though, quickly obviously became the tool that failed, and you launched into all kinds of drama, whether it was a cool thing like Enemy Within or just a cheat to get somebody into danger or leave them stuck where they can't escape and all that. But the basic thing they had to kind of limit to not let the writers go wild was, you had to put a limit on the transporter. Otherwise, if you had like long distance beaming, why would you need ships? But so the Iconians basically are like, haha, we didn't need ships. We actually could like go halfway across the galaxy or whatever. And that's what made them so the line I always remember from this is Picard saying something about, demons of air and space, demons of air and space
and darkness, something like that.
Space and darkness, yeah. I always remember that line. But I mean, that basically sums it up. If you can like just kind of come in and kamikaze in out of with no warning at anybody, no wonder they were, and then for everybody to gang up on them and finally put them down.
Quickly, just to correct myself, it's Demons of Air and Darkness. Just looked it up.
Okay. Demons of Air and Darkness. We were farther ahead than I am, but it is. That's the line that kind of sums up the whole Iconian thing. So if the people they were, terrorizing, it was like a futuristic blitzkrieg or something. If they would just pop him out of nowhere, it wasn't even shock and awe. It's just the fact that they could pop in anywhere, and you kind of got a little taste of that in Contagion.
Is there a time limit? Is that porthole, that gateway, does that go into present day of anywhere you want?
Oh, like a time portal?
Right.
I don't think they never brought time, like a Guardian of Forever kind of a thing. They never brought time into it. It was always like at the moment. So you could go a million places. And they never got into they never went into like the technology or about controlling it, like Picard and Data are standing and Worf are standing there watching it just cycle through, just like Kirk and Spock did with the Guardian of Forever, except that was in time. It was all Earth, but it was in time. And this is just a case of, and probably a lot of those scenes, they didn't even know where they were, but they recognized their ship and they recognized the Romulans,
there was something about that. There was something about that didn't quite vibe with me, as the French say. And maybe I missed something, which was, how did they know that walking through that gateway would actually put them there? How did they know it wasn't just like, visual representation of it? And I assumed and I expected they would throw something across it first to test it out. If they threw like that tricorder, for example, they throw it across into the Enterprise bridge, and then they see Riker on the other side picking it up and going, where did this come from? Then they'd say, okay, this is safe. But otherwise, they just walked in. Did I miss that, or did they just skip that part completely?
It's second season, Ryan. What can I say? It's
well, what's wrong with the second season? What was going on at that point?
Data did put his hand in.
Didn't they do that? They threw something through the doors and they picked it up on the other side. Remember Nagilum and the baffling, we're just going in circles in our own ship.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah.
No, they did do it. They just, you saw when Data put his hand inside of that.
Yeah.
He actually reached in there and grabbed Worf's ass. They didn't show it from the other angle.
Okay.
That's how they knew it works.
That was a deleted scene.
It's a deleted scene from.
Yeah. Let's get that director's cut, or I'm going to be pissed. I got to see this.
But no, I thought this episode was good because it had that kind of mythological aspect, behind it. That was one of the things that was intriguing to me. It actually, they mentioned archaeology, so it almost felt like Indiana Jones-ish, where the artifacts are involved, archaeology.
They're trying to read the language.
Right.
Yeah.
They're trying to read the language. They mentioned the Rosetta Stone, the galactic Rosetta Stone, and how this artifact that was found by Captain Varley, who I thought did a great job in this episode too, by the way. For
as little as he had, he did a lot with what he had to do. Yeah,
he did a lot. I thought, and he played a captain well to me. I thought he had that voice, seniority, leadership, all of that stuff.
Just to jump on that real quick, what makes his job extra tough is that not only that he comes in for a day of work, doesn't know the cast, doesn't know the crew, doesn't know whatever, most likely, but he's talking to a camera, and there's an AD off stage, just saying Picard's lines, very regular, and this guy has to show up at 5 a.m. on a Wednesday and talk to nothing and make it seem like he's having a full conversation. I watched Picard. Picard does it great, but he's had a year and a half to practice this. This poor dude has to come in, and he did a great job of humanizing it, of adding his own little isms, of adding his own little hems and haws and thinking about it, because sometimes we see these guest actors, they show up and they're just reading lines to a camera, and you can tell. And he actually added a little bit more human aspect to it. So shout out to him.
Notice, they did do a little bit. It wasn't just totally a flat wall view screen character, because it's a sister ship, so they get to do the old, just redress it. But if you notice the tactical, the horseshoe behind him, the pedestal in the middle, they had the door open and they had the guts hanging out, because supposedly they've all been racked by these, malfunctions, and they're like madly trying to trace stuff. So, and it was cool, because later on, when they're in the Iconian portal and they're trying to jump back to the Enterprise, the shot that you're seeing is, I think it's Dexter Clay was the stand anyway, but he's Worf's relief guy, his stand-in, and also he's standing there, and they've got the tactical horseshoe pedestal opened up too. So I'm like, you know what? They shot his captain scenes there, and then they did these little bits to show through the portal at the same time, because they had dressed up the pedestal at the tactical station with like circuit board guts hanging out and everything.
Yeah, here we go.
But what my point was that actor, the guest captain, he at least didn't have just a flat wall. He actually had a couple of extras behind him, and there was a little bit of life going on, and he didn't have to. He did a great job, but at least he wasn't as stuck as some of those guests who just do the view screen scenes.
Great. No, I thought he did a great job. I liked his personal logs. They felt
that was the thing.
That was a second day of work.
You are
for
on
him.
your own there when you're doing a log. Yeah,
I thought that was great. And I also noticed, Larry, that this episode had a lot of sets. So they had the redress on the Enterprise, and then they had the Romulan bridge that they had to construct. I don't know if that was just sitting around already ready to go, but they had to do that. And then they had the Iconian laboratory type room, which I don't know what that particular set was or how that was redressed from something else in the past, but that had to be done as well. So there were a lot of moments where I felt like, there's location wise, they were filming a lot of the ship.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is what I meant when I said this is a misleading episode, to go back and think about it in context, because I mean, for starters, well, here's the cool thing. We're in the strike time right now, and people get their timeline mixed. Some people, Shades of Grey, right? The notorious clip show that I guess you all haven't got to. Or
stay tuned for that, Cirroc. You are gonna love.
Oh wow!
That is well, I don't even want to say anything, but just
we'll just say. But people today chalk that up to the strike. It was a cut short show, and it was totally over budget. The strike actually happened between 1 and 2, not between 2 and 3. Okay. But I was going back and getting refreshed on this, and one of the things, like Michael Piller comes in late in season 3, and the whole reason that opened the pitch process up to fans happened was because he was so behind, and he knew there was a fandom, and he wanted to open it up to that in a way that would make sense legally, because there's all kinds of reasons why that had never been done before on any show. And in this case, Maury Hurley in season 2 was the showrunner, and he was feeling that. And they had already gone to the scripts they'd done for phase 2, and that's where the child came from. And he was behind the gun too, they were coming out of the strike and he was behind, and they were going there. So he had apparently wanted to open up the window for getting script ideas in also, but rather than going to fandom, he was just like looking everywhere. So apparently there's 2 writers on this, Beth Woods and the Gerber. Steve Gerber. Yeah. So apparently Beth Woods, who I met later on, I didn't realize it, she was an employee for the computer company that serviced all the computers on the Paramount lot, not just the Star Trek offices. And I had forgotten this. Balboa Computer. They still had the contract when Lolita and Janet were working on Voyager. I mean, it was that long, a long-term thing. And she was, they'd come by and check out their, and it was remember it's 1987 and 88 and things are still, new and woozy and early. And she's by the office a lot. And after a while, I'm sure somebody, maybe Maury Hurley, maybe one of the assistants said, "Oh my God, we're scrambling around looking for, my God, if you had an idea, we'd even take it." And she's like, "Well, have you thought about a computer virus?" Well, she basically pitched this idea, making her computer rounds. Mm-hmm. And then she didn't have any experience or representation. So she grabs this Gerber, who it turns out, Steve Gerber, I didn't mean to demeaning there. He was he'd written for Marvel Comics. And he's the one that created Howard the Duck.
It's really interesting to add to that Beth Woods, I looked her up very quickly just now. She only has one other writing credit. So in other words, she wasn't like a career writer. This was not what she did for a living. As you said, she worked at Paramount on the lot working on the computer or the computer company. Yet they didn't give her just a story by credit, which would be the norm. They let her or advised her or asked her to partner up with Steve Gerber and actually write the full episode. So she didn't just get a story by or idea by, kind of credit. She got the full written by Steve Gerber and Beth Woods, which is really cool. Must have been so much fun for her. And I think that's just great to give somebody that opportunity. They must have really liked her.
Well, it's on one hand, it's cool to hear a story like that, but those are the kind of stories that happen when things are kind of in chaos and there's not like a regular, machine going. But no, the other thing is the idea itself is this is 88. And we were talking about, we thought this was like a medical show or a pandemic, disease plague show. People weren't up savvy yet with the idea of what a computer virus was. Like, this is about the same, I had just bought my Mac Plus and it was barely a thing that, Macs don't get viruses like, IBM's running Windows do or running DOS. But just the world not being as computer literate and savvy and, everybody's got you can get viruses on your phone and your pad, much less your desktop. So it was the whole idea of this not being a human virus or an organic virus, but a mechanical virus was like a new concept. So I'm sure when she mentioned this, everybody in the office went, "Ooh, that's cool. Now what?" It could, and then there's a whole conversation in the episode where they're talking about, not a pandemic organic virus, but a computer virus. But you notice when they're talking, they don't, Geordi and Data and Worf should have picked up on this right away, but they didn't. Later on, how many years is it till they're talking about doing a virus to infect the Borg, right? With Hugh?
Yeah.
That's only like 3 years later. And within 3 years, the world's turned around and everybody goes, oh, a computer virus. Right. I get it. By the early 90s. But at this point, it was still a thing that was not only you had to explain it a little bit, but it was like, ooh, that's a fresh idea. That's cool. So this is a perfect, snapshot in time kind of
Yeah,
story.
Absolutely. And to jump on what Cirroc was asking a little bit, I wanted to kind of ask a little bit more on that about the set, the Iconian set, because Cirroc, when you asked that, it kind of made me think, it reminded me of the set they used when there was like those flashing lights. They were looking through like a big old microscope. Remember a few episodes ago at like flashing lights, and they said the flashing lights were an intelligent life. I feel like it may have been repurposing that set. I don't remember exactly that episode, but Larry, do you have any idea if that was a set that they repurposed, or if that you recognize it?
Well, it was interesting because this is the season where they overspent budgets. That's the reason why Shades of Grey wound up at the end. And it's the season you're coming down the line for Q Who, and they were scrimping to build a little bit of a Borg alcove for the Borg, bit. But they had spent a lot of money on the Sherlock Holmes show on Elementary Dear Data, and that was like a huge thing, and they put it in for the Emmys and all that, but it was way expensive. So, but I think they were spending more on sets just thinking they had to. And I don't know, but because this, like you mentioned, had the Romulan set, and they built a little baby set the very first time they had Romulans at the end of season 1 with Neutral Zone. And that was just mainly a glorified flat wall with the 2 Romulans, you know. But this is like a 3D set because people are doing blocking and running around and Picard beams in. It's not just her on her captain's chair and a wall. It's a 3D, at least 2 or 3 walls of a set, because you see when Picard beams in or when he walks through onto their bridge.
I think the episode was called Home Soil, actually, season 1, episode 17. Home Soil. Anyway, just a thought.
I have a few questions. First of all, I wanted to kind of piggyback a little bit what you were talking about, Larry, when you were mentioning the computer virus stuff. Data solves this problem by essentially rebooting, right? He shuts down and then turns back on again, which is a common thing to do nowadays when you have issues with your computer.
Turn them on and off. Did you try unplugging and unplugging back? It would have been great if when Data woke up, it made that Apple sound, that boom.
And so it's so funny because that is a common thing to do to resolve an issue that you have when your phone's freezing or the screen's stuck or something. So you turn it on, turn it back off. And I thought, wow, that's something that way ahead of its time. That's something that everybody knows now. But in the 89, nobody was thinking about those kinds of concepts. And it certainly wasn't popular on like a mass scale.
Right. In 89, they would have picked up Data and blown on him like a Nintendo cartridge. See if this...
So I thought that was just really clever, and also don't touch that one, Larry. And
I am not
either.
And but here's my questions for you. Number one, how many people would have died on a Galaxy class ship if it were to have exploded like that? Are we talking in the hundreds?
Because like around 1,100, a little between 1,000 and 1,100 people.
Yeah, I kind of was waiting to hear that number. Like, we just lost 1,000 people or something to that effect. But it was left up, kind of open in the air, because we only got the 18 in the beginning when Captain Varley talks about we lost 18 people, and then right in front of our face we see 1,000 people, and it just tells me the magnitude of what we just witnessed. That was one thing I wanted to know.
And you kind of let like Will or Wesley gets to kind of feel that.
Which is good.
That scene at the end, you guys just do your jobs and you move right along, and it's like, oh no, we feel it, which was kind of a nice.
Yeah, I'm glad they used Wesley for that. I thought they needed that moment because I felt like they had to rush over the tragedy of losing that many people. It felt like a little bit rushed. So I'm glad they kind of doubled back and hit that moment. But the Iconians, any backstory on why they used that name? Is there any?
Well, not really, aside from it's just cheesy, like Icon.
I did not even make that connection.
Oh, yeah.
I just thought it sounded like Draconian.
Yeah, that's what I was like. I didn't know where it came from. So
interesting.
It's just I mean, if there was maybe somebody's, I have a great uncle Icon and I named it for him. I don't know, but I just went, oh, that was cheesy. That seems so very early.
The producer Armis that they obviously named that monster Armis after.
Yeah, he was there a half season, I guess. But go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was going to say also, because I always think of our good friend Matt Boardman when I watch the visual effects. That ship exploding, that was remastered because it looked...
Had to be. There's no way that was 1989.
Right? I was like, what is this?
That was gorgeous.
That was great. That was great. So yeah, shout out to
the first time it was like a cheesy thing where it was just like the ship and then it kind of was just enveloped by a white light. And then they had like the saucer coming at you, and that was kind of cool because it was peeling back and
So you
Okay, so
remember
now
what it looked like
yeah,
before?
that's what I wanted to ask you, what the original look was, and so that was the original look. Okay.
Oh,
Very
I
good.
was watching whatever was on Paramount Plus. I didn't get my disc set. But but now watching, and you guys are watching in order, so but this was the first time this ship the Yamato had gotten mentioned a few episodes before, but this is the first time we actually saw a sister Galaxy class ship, and and they were very cagey in the beginning because it was a Galaxy class, so you assume there's a USS Galaxy, and not to go all tech head here, but they were really cagey in the beginning about how many other Galaxy class ships there were, because they didn't. On one hand, they didn't want to tie it down. They didn't want to make the Enterprise D not as special, So the famous memo that we all go back, and now it's in the news again with all the ships on Strange New Worlds. But the old memo where the original series, they tried to tie down and say there's 14 ships, but Kirk says there's 12, and then the Defiant's not on that list. But all that. So they were
that old argument. Cirroc and I are always. Oh man. Larry, we only have a minute left.
This was the first time they went there. Yeah.
We only have a minute left. Real quick, when you say KG, though, Cirroc and I think Kevin Garnett, of course. So kind of have to make sure we know what we're talking about there. But before you go, Larry, can you tell everybody about your shows? Because you do a lot of cool shows on your own channel.
Well, on the Trek Files is over at Roddenberry, and we echo that too. But that's our fifth. That's weekly. We just did 10 seasons, and we're on our hiatus right now. But that's a little 20-minute bit every week where we dig into Gene's files, and I have a guest on from the industry or someone's family, and we talk about that, like we had Cirroc just recently.
Wonderful.
We wound up the season. Yeah, we wound up the season with Aaron Walke from Prodigy, looking at some old animation work. Dorothy's interview with Dorothy Fontana from 1973, and then we were reflecting on what was the same and what was different, now. So it's never dusty history. But no, Trekland Tuesdays Live is Tuesdays at 1 Pacific and 4 Eastern and 9 o'clock UK time. My live show every week. And
what's
Second
the YouTube
Opinion,
channel?
There's a new episode.
They could just look up Larry Nemecek.
Oh, it's just everything's on LarryNemecek.com is the website. And my YouTube channel, please like and subscribe because I got in late, is just Larry's Trekland on YouTube. But Second Opinion, Cadet Alice and Dr. Trek look at Prodigy is a lot of fun with my granddaughter. So we're having a lot of fun. And then there's Portal 47 for your real background hounds, and Trekland Treks if you come to LA and want to tour location tours that you put together yourself with my help.
So much stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, this is why they call you Dr. Trek. Well, that, and also because you know everything about Star Trek and have written actual books about it. So that's probably also why.
There's that too.
Anyway,
thank you so much, Larry, for giving us the background knowledge and enlightening us.
Oh, well, my pleasure. I mean, it's the stuff out there, but it was, it's cool. One last thing. This is the first episode that Picard says tea Earl Grey hot.
I noticed that. When we spoke with Melinda Snodgrass, we noticed that she was the one that first gave us poker, them playing poker together and other things. And then this was the first episode where Picard asked for tea Earl Grey hot. But as you just mentioned, he doesn't actually get it.
So we could credit that to Steve Gerber and Beth Woods.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right. Thanks so much, Larry. We really appreciate you.
Thank you, Larry.
Everybody else, stick around. We will be right back with more coverage of this glorious episode on the Seventh Rule.
Trek well, guys.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Seventh Rule with Cirroc frickin' Lofton.
Hello.
Here are the Tribioids of the week. Captain Picard tries a pickup line on Captain Donald Yarley. The USS Yamato lost an engineering team. There's an emergency release system which dumps antimatter. Dr. Ramsey allowed Captain Varley. Dr. Ramsey allowed Captain Varley to carry away a device from the archaeological dig at Denius 3. Wesley heard the Iconians were just a myth. Legend has it that the Iconians traveled without starships. Wesley can't stop thinking about the USS Yamato. Captain Picard gets a house plant instead of tea Earl Grey hot. Lieutenant Geordie LaForge gets into a fight with a turbo lift. Dr. Pulaski is sending medical teams through the access tunnels, and an Enterprise nurse doesn't know what a splint is. I don't know why I'm hammering on that one, but I'm just like, come on, you have to know in basic medical training. They have to tell them, are the devices. This is what happens. If you're stranded on a planet and your technology's broken, you can't just stop being a medical professional. You have to know how to give somebody mouth to mouth. You have to know how to do CPR and do a splint. You have to know how to clean a wound. Right? These are like standard things, I would think.
Yeah, or where's the on button? Because, it's, yeah, you would think that would be part of a basic kind of, on the field training, because you're not always going to have your medical equipment on hand, and you're going to have to improvise in different moments. And you would think they would teach that kind of thing, at the very least, as a course in prehistoric medical treatment. Like that would be the class you would take in school or something, right?
Right.
So yeah, I thought that was a little bit weird. It didn't bother me that much, because it just, it was just trying to show how much into the future that they are, and how much that they rely on these kinds of medical technology as opposed to the old-fashioned way. It didn't kill me that much, but there's a few things that do kind of irk me a little bit. And in this episode, that thing made itself present several times, twice that I can remember. And this is my thing. I thought the way the military or the Federation would move is in a chain of command type of format. So that if I were going to go do something, it would either I would notify somebody higher up, and there would be this kind of understanding that this is what I'm doing. I thought that's how it normally goes. In this episode, Captain Varley has this artifact and makes a unilateral decision to go find it in a restricted area without permission, right? Because of the fear that it could end up in the wrong person's hands. But that doesn't change the way protocol works, in my judgment. And that is to report to superiors, get the proper permission, and have an understanding, because one, if anything happens to you, they know where to look for you, and two, maybe they will send help with you. Maybe they're going to authorize, a bigger fleet to go, like an escort. Maybe there could be a whole bunch of other reasons why you would want to consult.
Right.
And not to mention, you could start a war between the Romulans.
And it's not clear if they didn't not only ask for permission, but it seems like they may have not even informed Starfleet. Maybe they're just on detached duty. Maybe Starfleet doesn't even know. And then Picard's like, yeah, screw it, I'm going to do the same thing.
And then he does it.
They're like, whatever, rules, schmools.
That's what I'm saying. Then he does it. He does the exact same thing. Now I can understand he does it because he gets a call for distress, and so if you get a distress call, I guess the protocol is to help immediately. Maybe there's some kind of notification system in place there already, like an automatic one. But I can understand when you're reacting to somebody. It's like if you see somebody drowning, you don't ask permission for your boss, can I go save them? You just jump in the water and save them, right? You don't need permission. It's like it's a moment of distress. It requires emergency decision making without kind of having to go through chain of command stuff. That I understand. But I don't understand two captains going completely rogue in a neutral zone where it literally could start a conflict between two very powerful countries, right? And, that would be like a fighter pilot deciding to take his jet and fly somewhere where he's not supposed to be flying in unrestricted air. Yeah. Yeah. He said, well, because I found something over there. There was something that popped up on my radar screen.
There was a really interesting fish over there. I wanted to check it out. I think that's a new discovery.
Yeah.
It's not that important.
Atlantis. It was Atlantis. I thought I saw Atlantis. I don't know if that's a good enough reason. So that's the only thing that bothers me is the protocol being constantly kind of not addressed. And that's antithetical to chain of command and the way military works from my understanding.
There were a few things that bothered me about this episode, and I feel like maybe I'm in the minority, but this episode didn't quite do it for me. A lot of times I'm the defender of an episode saying I really enjoyed something, even if it's campy or even if it's weird, because it gives me new information. What I did like was the new information about the Iconians, this legendary thing. And as you pointed out, kind of like an Atlantis or a mysterious legendary race, that's really cool. But yeah, there were a few things that, like, I just kind of felt like I kind of started, and this is just on me, I think I kind of started to just get lost, like in the second half of the episode when when Geordi was figuring out the answer and explaining it. I'm like, am I supposed to understand this, or am I supposed to just be like, okay, Geordi figured it out, cool, done? Like, I didn't really know, because sometimes they're just like, don't worry about it, it's not important, Geordi figured it out. But other times they're like, no, it's important that you follow along because it's really interesting. Like, I don't know, maybe my brain wandered, but I did notice at the beginning of the episode that Riker, Jonathan Frakes specifically, looked like he was sunburnt. And now I'm realizing that there were 4 weeks in between this episode and the previous episodes. They had 4 weeks off. And I'm wondering if he just went off to like Hawaii or something, because he came back and his cheeks were pretty rosy, but not just the fun kind of rosy cheeks. Like his whole face was rosy. So I think he had a little sunburn there. I don't know if you noticed that. Probably.
No, I did notice. The only thing I did notice was how he walks with his shoulders back and how broad his shoulders are when he walks. It's like this really big stance. And I noticed that when I saw him walking with this kind of bravado that he has when he walks, shoulders back, kind of big chest. It reminded me also of Kira, because Kira in her way kind of has that same shoulders back bravado, like she might just punch somebody kind of in that stance. Like, what? You have a problem with it? And then I thought Kira and Riker have similar names. I just wrote that in my notes. Riker with his shoulders back like Kira. And then I thought Riker, Kira, very similar sounds of names. Like it's the Riker, Kira. And so that's one thing that popped out to me. Also noticed Major Roddenberry's voice on his computer. It came out during a small scene while Picard was talking to the computer to get the logs of Captain Barley, and Major's voice was the voice of the computer, and it just reminded me of how lovely a person she was, and just gave me some good memories about her. And it made me think about Rod, if he ever listens to an episode kind of in the background or something, just to kind of hear his mom's voice.
Oh, I love that. I sure hope so. Sometimes, not to be morbid, but sometimes I hang on to a lot of voicemails, especially from like family members, because I'm like, hey, you never know, just in case. I still have many of the voicemails from our buddy Mr. Aaron Eisenberg. So I do wonder, you're right, maybe he does listen to specific episodes so he can hear his mom's voice again, just saying something matter-of-factly, and just hearing that tone, that recognizable tone. That's really sweet. One thing that was not sweet was, and I thought it was so funny, it was when Troy was like, oh, the people need, something to do to keep them busy so they're not stressing. First of all, that's felt a little bit rude. Like, let's keep them busy so they're not stressing out. But it was even worse that Picard's like, great idea. Why don't I put you in charge of divvying up the menial tasks? In other words, he's giving her that menial task. She's saying, like, let's give him something to do. And he's like, okay, cool. I'll put you in charge of the doing nothing sorting. But then she says, but if the Romulans come back, you'll need me to negotiate. And he goes, I'll manage.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, she got burned so hard. He's like, boy, it'll be real tough to talk to the Romulans without you stating the obvious after the fact, but we'll do our best without you. I know it's Riker that
she's
said
not
that.
telling you the truth. I know already. Just, are you done doing the menial stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought there were moments here that, I don't know, it looked cheesy to me. Like, there were cheesy moments. One of them was Geordi in the turbo lift. I thought him going around, getting banged around in the turbo lift was a little bit, it was Police Academy-ish.
Yes, I love it. Give me some Police Academy references. Here he's rolling around on the ceiling of the turbo lift.
Yeah, and it was cheesy in a way. I'm sure if he could take it back, he would. The other thing that I didn't really think was the best, and I usually give Brent Spiner his kudos for when I feel like he does an amazing job, which he has been consistently doing throughout watching the show. Not to me so much in this particular performance.
I thought the opposite.
Yeah, I didn't like the whole where he's shut down and getting taken over by the computer and doing the head motion and the yes. It didn't work with me. I'm sorry, I wasn't buying it. He was giving all of the right answers, so there wasn't even it would be different if there was like words mixed in there that shouldn't be there, and he's like being taken over so that the sentences weren't coming out the way he wants them to come out. But it was just like him formulating regular sentences, just acting like he can't do it, and my head has got to move this way because I'm fighting the computer virus.
It was like 1950s robot.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wasn't feeling it. I thought it was cheesy. Just like I thought it was cheesy when the whole electrical thing, and it wasn't the best for me. I did like Wesley coming in and voicing his concern about all those people that died. I thought that was genuine, like a real touching moment for me.
A couple quick points of trivia as well. Everybody at home, during the break, Larry mentioned something that we forgot to bring up in the first segment, which was that the lady that played Sub Commander Terrace, her name was Carolyn Seymour, and they actually had her back a couple times in a couple episodes. One was season 4, episode 15, First Contact. That was one of the episodes that our friend Mark Zickrey wrote on Star Trek, and that's a great one. If I remember correctly, that was Riker playing a Malkorian, and so this lady played Marasta Yale. And in season 7, the actress came back and was cast as Commander Toreth in Face of the Enemy, where she plays a Romulan again. And Larry says that they did not realize they were casting the same lady to play a Romulan, that the same as 4 seasons prior, and it was a lost opportunity because they could have just called her the same character, and it would have been so cool if
Taurus and Taurus.
Yeah, it would have been so cool if 4 seasons later the same character is back, because they had the same actress playing a Romulan. So that was that shows the discontinuity that was going on in the middle seasons there, so that they didn't know what was going on previously. But the other thing really quickly was about the Iconians. And that was that, yes, they were mentioned on Deep Space Nine as well as Voyager, in a joke that Tom Paris said to Harry Kim, and B'Elanna Torres was there in that scene, I believe. But it was also mentioned or shown in 3 episodes of Star Trek Discovery. They were on a tactical map in Choose Your Pain, that episode. They were also, looking this up, they were also mentioned in, what is that, season 4, the Dark Matter Anomaly, in The Examples, Discoveries, The Examples, and also mentioned in Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad. Anyway, so definitely mentioned a few times in Discovery as well. Pretty cool.
I don't know if you noticed it, but it didn't come out right to me at the end when Picard is on the Romulan ship and this Caroline Seymour, Captain Taurus of the ship, says something to the effect was, like, I'm glad that you're going to die with me aboard the ship.
Yeah.
And Picard says, not, I think, today.
Yes.
And it just, for me, it just didn't sound structurally the way I would say it sentence.
I watched it twice. I watched it twice just to make sure, and I got the closed captioning on to make sure. And it said, "Not, comma, I think, comma, today, comma, Commander." And then the funny thing was, right after he leaves, she didn't look angry. She looked sad, like she just lost a friend, or maybe she was just sad because she's like, "I'm not really sure if that's what that sentence meant." She was like, "Now I'm just sad." She just looked sad. I put, "She's sad now." In my notes.
she completely got stunned by the verbiage of Picard. Structurally, the sentence didn't flow right to me. I thought maybe, I think not. I think not. Commander.
Not today, I think.
Or not today.
But then maybe her universal translator just translated it to doubt it. Maybe just like doubt it and then disappeared.
But he says, not, nope. I think, today, Commander. Not, I think. I just thought that was a very weird sentence structure for a guy who's pretty well versed with the grammar and all of that.
Just reading the lines that are given to him, I guess, in weird orders. But look, everybody, it's time for the 7th rule, home run of the episode. What do you got for us, Cirroc Lofton?
Home run.
I know, so much to choose from.
Yeah. Is there?
I'll go while you think.
Yeah, you go first.
I would just say that there was a moment, and I don't remember exactly where it was, but the music scoring, the composition, and who was it? I always forget who it was, but the music was great in this moment. Let me make sure I get it correct. Dennis McCarthy. Okay. So, there was just really cool scoring at a particular time. And if I should have looked ahead of time where it was, but it was like, there was just some crazy moment that happened. And then the music jumped in for just a couple notes and it sounded really cool. I liked it. It gave us the bump. It had a little bit of cheesiness, a little bit of the 80s, but it was fun. It was good. I noticed it. And in an episode like this one, I felt like that one gets the home run of the day for me. The composer, the person that scored, I guess maybe not the composer, but the Dennis McCarthy who scored those scenes.
Okay, I got my answer. I finally got it. It came to me. But before I give it, I'm going to just go into a really quick thing that I thought of while Larry was talking earlier. Mm-hmm. The instructions for the console when Data was like blue, yellow, red, blue, blue, blue.
Simon says.
I was like, that's Simon. That's the game Simon. How easy is this? Like, this is the advanced technology of 3 blues, blue, blue, blue. That's one sideway. But I'm going to give a double home run. The first home run goes to Beth Woods. And that's because I like the fact that she took what she does in her daily life and turned it into a script. And that goes for everybody out there. There's ways that you can apply your own daily life and find creative ways to think about it and apply it in whatever way you want to. And so I think that's just also indicative of the constitutional lawyer that we had on, who talked about how constitutional law informed her on, writing that episode, Melinda Snodgrass. So that's the first thing I want to do. I like the fact that Beth Woods, computer expert, actually used her knowledge and background in computer and made an interesting episode out of it. That's the first one. The other home run goes to the guy who plays Captain Donald Varley. I thought he was great in this episode. I would have liked to see more of him had he not been, destructed. But I did like his performance. I thought he was one of the better guest Starfleet officers that we've seen so far up to this point. He had the bravado. He had the lines down. As you mentioned, he's talking into basically a blank screen, or just he's not really getting a chance to interact because most of the stuff is, just him as a recording, which means he doesn't get to act opposite Picard and not too much back and forth there. So his performance was spot on. He did all of the technobabble stuff with a level of wisdom and authority that it takes, that's believable and convincing, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And I like the tone, because I believe he set the tone for the episode. His solemn demeanor and the kind of gravitas in his voice. So that's my home runs.
Great stuff. Just to add to Beth Woods writing about computers and Melinda M. Snodgrass writing about constitutional law, it's one of the rules of screenwriting or writing in general: write what you know. If you've played tennis since you were 4 years old, write a script about a tennis player. That way there's less research. You know it well backwards and forward. Understand the nuances. You get it. You love the sport. But also, very quickly, that musical note that I caught, I did find it in my notes. It was when Data says, "Sensors reading no life." Sensors reading no life, sir. Then there's this great couple musical notes, and Worf says, "Romulan ship." That was it. It was just, there was this moment in there that just heightened everything. Just a couple notes, sounded really good. So we'd like to give a very special thanks to some of our pals right now. Their names are Homer Frizzell, Dr. Anne-Marie Siegel, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackman Tom, TJ Jackson Bay out in Missouri, Bill Victor Arukin.
Arukin!
Our good pal, Titus Moeller. He might be a doctor someday. Titus Moeller, Darlena Marie, Dr. Mohammed Noor, Tierney C. Diekman, Anna Post, Anil O. Palat, Joe Balsarati, Mike Gu, DQ, Neil Akasaka. Love that dude. Justine Norton Kurtzen, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, live from Tokyo, the Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Justin Weir, Jake Barrett, Jane Jorgensen, Henry Unger, Allison Leach Hyde, Julie Manosfi, Marcia Classic Schreier, and of course, Dr. Susan V. Gruner and Jason the Outrageous Oken. Everybody, stick around. We did it. Make sure that you, if you're listening in, you also subscribe to the 7th Rule 2, which covers all the new series like Discovery, Picard, Lower Decks, Prodigy, Strange New Worlds. That's the 7th Rule 2, wherever you listen to your podcast. Everybody, stick around. We'll be right back on the 7th Rule. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the 7th Rule. This is the free-for-all. Cirroc Lofton is here. Melissa Longo has joined us.
Hi.
We also have the Dark Lord, Chris McGee, wearing a really cool shirt you could get on our Teespring store. It's the isolinear chip. Cool. Faith Howell is also here. She's on the bridge of the Enterprise D. Eve England is out in Wales, if you can believe that. Carrie Schwent's got a really cool background. It looks like Romulan clothing.
Mm-hmm.
TJ Jackson Bay is also on the Enterprise D, it looks like. Mai is live in Tokyo with a fun background of her own. Marcia Classic Schreier is here, being as loud as she damn wants today. Also, Jason the Outrageous Oken is here. Cool background poster. Alison Leach Hyde is here, also wearing an Abyssinian kiosk, just like Eve England is. Got Mr. Matt Boardman, the Matt Boardman that is. Got Jed Thompson returning. And of course, we've got Anna Post and her new cadet. Can't see her yet, but she's here. All right, first things first. Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score.
I'm going to guess probably like a 6.5. Yeah, I'm going to guess a 6.5. It would be lower if it wasn't this Iconian episode thing, but...
Does anybody else have any guesses as to what the IMDb score that doesn't already know?
6.3.
What'd you say, Eve?
6.3.
6.3, and I heard a 7.0 as well.
No, I'm gonna go 6. What do you do? 6.5, Cirroc? I'm gonna go 6.6.
All right.
Little gamesmanship there.
6.8.
Who said $1?
6.8.
That was me.
I'd buy that for
That's my
$1.
line.
Yeah.
Was that RoboCop, Jason Oken?
Yep.
Good knowledge. Very good. The correct answer is, I'm as surprised as you are, 7.6. Wow. Eve looked like she just ate bitter lemonades. Wait, are those things? Who was closest to that? Was that you, TJ?
No, someone had a 7.0.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That was me. I like
Good job. Well done. Also, did everybody catch today's non-appearance mention? I caught one.
Yes. It's Maddox.
Yep.
It was real quick, but yep, it was Bruce Maddox. It's really good. All right. Malissa Longo, cool shirt. You can get yours at theintrovertedrepublic.com, everybody. What do you got for us, Malissa?
And Zoom. Jordy mentioned not having access to Zoom's research, so he mentioned Zoom.
I missed that. All right. Good catch. What else you got for us?
Well, okay. I have a few points. O'Brien, woo! I would like to learn more about Romulans because I'm curious about them. You know what I'd like to see is maybe a show or even a short treks on Romulus to see the day-to-day life of Romulans and how they live. Yeah, that would be fun. I like how Star Trek is way ahead of its time. Looking at these personal logs had me thinking, wow, this is a Zoom chat, what he's doing with his personal logs. And this is what, 1989? And I'm like, this is normal everyday life now. So I kind of took it for granted while watching it, and I had to stop and think, wow, that's pretty forward thinking, like very forward thinking. But overall, I liked that this episode was like a puzzle, and that it showed how we often take the long way around to solve a puzzle, even though the solution is probably the simplest possible answer. And but that we sometimes have to take the long way around to figure out why the simplest answer works. So that's what I got from this episode. Yeah.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Malissa Longo. What's up, Chris McGee? How are you today? What do you think of this one?
I'm doing very well, thank you. I enjoyed this episode, despite the fact that it's not really all that much of an engaging episode, but it was good enough to warrant a semi-sequel, in Deep Space Nine. But there were a couple of firsts in this one. First time we get tea, Earl Grey, hot. And of course, it malfunctions, so he doesn't actually get his tea. The fantastic Carolyn Seymour makes her first appearance in Star Trek and TNG as Sub-Commander Terrace. I thought it was interesting seeing Riker's incredulous response to Geordi's theory that there might actually be a design flaw in the Enterprise in a Galaxy-class ship. It kind of reminds me of another sophisticated piece of machinery back in 1912 that was also considered unsinkable. Anyway, and I had to look it up because it's just, I won't go into the details about the rabbit hole, but I will say that I wondered why the Iconians would want to visit Toronto City Hall. The Iconian image on the right and the relatively recent image, the actual City Hall on the left there. I actually found 5 fan theories why they would want to visit it, but I'm not going to go into that. As for memorable quote of the episode, there were actually a few that I remember. A couple of them I'll skip past. One's pretty long, the other one's pretty not that great. So I'll go with my third choice, which is fate protects fools, little children, and ships named Enterprise.
Great stuff. Thank you very much.
So Chris, are you saying the Iconians are Canadian? Is that
Iconadians?
That's good. Okay. Like it.
Maybe that's their home world. We just didn't know it all this time.
Exactly.
It tracks though. Look, everybody, Faith Howell is here. What do you got for us today, Faith? How are you?
I'm doing all right. I watched this episode really quick after work today, and so I didn't get to take notes, but I definitely remember the Iconians more through Deep Space Nine. And so it was exciting to get to go back and go, aha, that's what Worf was talking about, destroying the gateway on Iconia. So that was a fun little connection back to our Deep Space Nine roots. And I also really laughed hard at the dig about Picard's antique humor. So
very nice. Thank you very much, Faith Howell. Antique humor is always welcome here, though, however. Look, Eve England is here. She's out in Wales. How are you today, Eve? And what did you think of this one?
Yeah, good, thanks. I think similarly to Faith, actually. So I knew when I watched it, I was like, oh, aren't those the same gates that we saw in that Deep Space Nine episode? And I mentioned it to James. He said, yeah, that's the one where we first see Weyoun. So he just loves that episode. So I actually did put that on just now to watch it, just to kind of go back and now understanding what they're referring to in the context. So I thought that was pretty cool. I think though, similarly to what Chris said, I just found it just lacked something. I didn't really like the sort of the standoff with the Romulans. I mean, I think that it just didn't feel that it necessarily added too much to it, other than setting up why that they had to be in the neutral zone. But I just felt that, I mean, the Iconians, it's such an interesting idea in and of itself, and I think to me this would have been a much more interesting episode if it had been more of an intellectual discussion, because it just made me think, that we're in this, and obviously this is why Star Trek, and they go and they meet, and you've got all these different races, you've got all these different aliens, and everyone interacting. But this was actually a much more, when we think about how big space is and the times, actually, they're this ancient extinct race, and how we haven't kind of ever met them because we've missed out in time. And I thought that would have been quite interesting for them to talk about that, and talk about some of the theorizing as to what type of society were they, and maybe they could have said, how might society or another species in kind of 200,000 years in the future from Picard's time, how would if they saw certain artifacts that we had, how they might sort of interpret our culture and things like that. So I thought I'd have been more interested in some of that sort of conversation and looking at the archaeology aspects of it. So I think I would have liked to have seen that, because they sound like a super interesting, species that, is mentioned in Deep Space Nine, and I think is mentioned. I think there was something in Voyager as well, but I can't quite remember that link.
Right.
And then I suppose just generally speaking, one of the little nitpicks I had, which just made me laugh at this, and I thought, this is the first ship going there into the neutral zone when you've got a ship full of families and kids. It just seemed really irresponsible. I was like, you've got Section 31 and you've got all these different military arms that you could probably call upon to go into a dangerous environment. And I was like, I get why, obviously Picard then does exactly the same thing. And I thought, there's going to be an inquiry here because this is just reckless. But yeah, that just made me chuckle because I thought there's just no way they would do this in real life. But I get why they did it for the story, but I thought that was funny.
Mm-hmm. Great stuff from first-time viewer Eve England out in Wales. Carrie Schwent is here. She's not a first-time viewer. She's a pro at this stuff. What'd you think of this one?
This one's a very fun one. I've got a couple gold stars to award that I'll save for later. That I have each one has a couple fun little points to mention. Permit me to fangirl for just a moment at the actress that plays the sub commander. I grew up with watching the original Quantum Leap, and she was the Al to the alternate, the evil Leaper. So she pops up in like 3 different episodes of the original Quantum Leap. She has such a cool voice. She's in a couple of episodes of Star Trek Voyager, also in Janeway's Jane Austen-y type holodeck novel, and her costume in those episodes, it's fantastic. I love the way they dressed back then. And I loved her outfit, but when I went looking for pictures of the fabric, I just didn't like it, so I found this guy instead. And I finally have the right episode to wear my t-shirt for the first cruise that has the Romulan Star Empire on the side, and little sides over here have all the ports of call from that particular cruise. Such a fun cruise. That poor guy in sickbay that Pulaski just unloads on. He's just got to stand there. He's got his arms crossed. He has poor thing just has to be the object of her venting, and he walks away and he's like, okay, she's gone. I can breathe now. I did enjoy her in this episode, especially talking back to her doctor assistant guy who said, okay, what's a splint? He went through the academy. I'm sure they have their survival training. He knows about a splint. I'm gonna let it go and chalk it up to a brain fart that with all the chaos of the situation he forgot. So we can let that one pass. And I very much enjoyed the Picard talking to Wesley about the Iconians and talking about looking back at history. History is written by we've heard it said a million times. History is written by the winners, not the losers. So it's always any story about something in the past is going to have a slant to it one way or the other. And he says that again later on when talking to Worf before Worf leaves with Data. So with that in mind, that inspired my more philosophical limerick for the episode. History is written by the winners. Events change shape when told by the victors. Each side has their truth, but one can't assume. The context must always be considered.
Mm-hmm.
I love when Picard gets when he philosophizes.
Mm-hmm. Thanks very much, Carrie, with the cool background of the week. TJ Jackson Bay is out in Missouri. What's up? What do you got for us today?
This is one of my favorite episodes. One, because I do love and did love, anything that had to do with the Romulans, especially, back, on the first watches, the Romulans were super mysterious. I'd seen them in the original series. We didn't really have a lot of information on what they were about, but they seemed so cool. And I love, those D-Deridex class warbirds anytime I get to see one. And we actually got to go on board one. So that was a super awesome part of this episode for me. Another thing is I always enjoyed seeing the captain of the Yamato, Captain Donald Varley. And seeing that ship explode, on the first watch was kind of stunning because, we're kind of thinking like Wesley, oh my God, there were so many people on that ship and that ship is just like our ship. What's going to happen to us? I kind of had all of those feelings, watching this, over the years, before we had more content to gorge on and more references. And another thing this made me think of is, when they were filming, this is season 2 of The Next Generation. And so they were kind of like on the borderline of, and I think they even mentioned it in the last episode that, we, maybe explored 19% of our galaxy. And so they're on the borderline of, okay, how much of this space is all still a mystery. And, as we go forward, it kind of seems like they're more expansive than what they appear to be now. So now everything is new and we're exploring and we don't know what's out there. And so it's fun. But again, back to Captain Varley. This is the first time I looked up the actor because, before I'm just like, okay, that face is familiar. I've seen it, somewhere. I've seen it everywhere. And the actor's name is, I'm going to butcher this, Thalmus Rasalala. And when I went back and looked in the Internet Movie Database, he has been in some of everything, especially a lot of older shows. His career kicked off, in the mid 60s. And he was just one of those guys that popped up as a guest on, so many shows that became household names like The Jeffersons or All in the Family, Sanford and Son, and, even some movies like the original Hulk movie, and quite a few. If you get a chance to go back and look at his credits, I think it's worth it to kind of have a mental idea of what an actor this is and what a guest he had to be on the show at that time, especially a show that wasn't really that popular yet. It was gaining popularity, but it wasn't there yet. So great get for the casting. And lastly, I really kind of grabbed the idea of the thought that Geordi expressed that 90% of the ship's operations are automated. And that makes me think of the direction that technology is going now. We rely a lot more on automation than we did in the past. We have, automated things in our homes. We got these voice assistants. We can tell Alexa or Siri, what we want to do, and it does it. And it made me think of airplanes. Airplanes have a lot of automation, and on one of my recent flights, I was sitting next to a pilot. We were in an Airbus airplane, but he pilots a smaller regional jet, and he was talking about how less automated those planes are. It makes me think of all the functions that people have to do in a job like that, and when they rely on the automation, they tend to begin losing, some of the skill of manually piloting, just like. Maybe, the Enterprise relying on all this automation, made things a little bit more risky when that automation began to fail. And not only that, somebody mentioned the example of Dr. Pulaski and relying on the automation of medical technology and forgetting, something as basic as a splint, as, someone in the medical field. Yeah, it makes you, say, didn't this guy go to school? Didn't they teach him the basics? They probably did, but in his practice, he didn't really use those, and so he lost it. And, that's not to say that automation is bad. It makes our lives, more convenient. But at the same time, it kind of gives us a reminder to, at times, practice the basics so that we know, what to do when the automation goes away. And with that, I will save more for things left unsaid.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. TJ Jackson Bay out in Missouri. We've got Mai live in Tokyo, 2 names in a row with their location included. What do you got for us today, Mai?
It's like TJ was reading my script here. That's cool. I'm gonna cover some of those same points, but from a different perspective. This was a solid 4, maybe a 4.5 in my book. Not their best episode. So if the Yamato logs are being downloaded by the time they meet, why not solve the problem remotely? We're talking about computers here, yeah? That was like, really what? And it's done every day with computers worldwide today. So why not in the 24th century? Matt, not to be mean to you, but why did the skin of the saucer section of the Yamato melt like a phaser had hit it when the rest of it blew up? Why wouldn't it have just exploded? That seemed a little bit interesting to me, and I'm using that word the same way I used to describe my mom's food when she wasn't doing a good job. For the initial analysis, they're in the meeting room there, and they're looking at hardware issues and possible physical design flaws. I mean, given the role that computers played even in controlling an airplane in the 20th century, why didn't they multitask and look at the control systems and software from the very beginning? Especially if, as they say, 90% of what goes on the ship is done automatically. It blew my mind or melted my mind that it took 42 minutes of a 45-minute show for them to realize that they had to reinstall the system software. A little bit slow there, guys. Figure this out a little bit. Hence the IT help desk. I think they should have called the Starfleet Academy IT help desk. Not really their best effort so far. And I got a couple other things which are maybe not right for this segment, so I'll save them for things left unsaid.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mai, live in Tokyo. Look, it's Marsha Classic Schreier. What's up, Marsha? What do you have for us today? And how are you, by the way?
I'm okay. It's a lot of people have said what I was going to say, so I'll just be nitpicky. But I love Carolyn Seymour from TNG, and we see her again as a Romulan in a few seasons. So I always look forward to her performances. I like how Geordi is becoming more and more sure of himself in his engineering role, and it made me wonder, what were they thinking in season 1 when they didn't have a chief engineer on every single episode? And I liked what he did in this episode, except for when he was examining Data, and he merely said, "He's gone." That's it. Like every other time that Data is not functioning, Geordi has come up with some brilliant way to fix him in 5 minutes. So there's that. I didn't like how Picard was so it was so easy for him to access another captain's log. I mean, I realized the other captain was dead, but should it be that easy? Why would anyone say anything personal in their personal log if someone else on another ship can just access it so easily? My favorite quote probably was Riker saying, "Our own ignorance could kill us," which maybe he was thinking Q was right. And how does Data translate mother, father into manual override?
Mm-hmm.
Someone needs to explain that to me. And for as vitally important it is to keep people out of the neutral zone, the Enterprise and other ships seem to enter it quite often. Didn't they just enter the neutral zone or come close to it in the last episode of the first season. So they seem to be violating their own regulations almost as often as Kirk did. And Melissa, we do get to see day-to-day life of the Romulans, but you're going to have to wait a few seasons.
So be patient.
Be patient. No spoilers, but be patient.
Yeah, great stuff, Marcia. Classic Schreier. I did wonder about that. Isn't that an invasion of privacy? Like just looking up those logs, but I guess it's for the benefit of saving humanity or whatever. So I don't know. But Jason Oaken,
I don't know. Like most of season 2, I wasn't terribly impressed with the episode. So
you just wait. It gets a lot better with Shades of Grey. So just stick around for that.
Just in Picard's defense, he did ask for the logs that mention Iconians or Romulan or something to that effect, I think. Good so point. He gave it a descriptive to narrow it so it wasn't so personal.
Okay.
Excellent point.
I'll accept that.
All right. But will Jason, the outrageous Oaken, accept that? What do you got for us today, Jason?
Hey, everybody. For me, this is one of those mixed bag episodes, perhaps something more quintessential of early Next Generation, something that's, at least this one moves a little bit faster. There's good pacing throughout. But I perhaps liked this better when I was younger because, I mean, if you look at this, and it's kind of very skin deep. There are some ideas here, but even the science fiction ideas aren't all that developed. And I think there's no real personality here. It's not connected to any of the characters. It's completely plot driven. There's nothing here that would connect to anybody. Everybody's active doing something, but it's advancing the plot and getting to the end of the result. So if you like that type of storytelling, and I think a lot of the early Next Gen, right, before Michael Piller took over, had that sort of flavor to it. It's more of a classic kind of 80s television where you don't get into the characters too much. I mean, if this were right now, you'd have one of the characters being tortured by memories of somebody coming out of thin air and killing their ancestors or something like that, and that have nightmares. That's sort of today's version of something like that. So there's that aspect to it, and then that makes it not necessarily a great episode. There are some good things about it that I didn't notice, obviously, when I was a little younger. I think it's shot pretty well. Considering what was done, I think Joseph Scanlon did a pretty decent job. He directed a few early Next Gen episodes and never came back. I mean, if you look at his resume, it spans decades. I mean, the guy's been around and did a lot of things before and after. I mean, anything from the early scene in the teaser where I think it was handheld. It was the Steadicam. I know that Memory Alpha talks about whether it was Steadicam or handheld. I mean, to me, it looked like it was handheld. It was a little too shaky for Steadicam, which is quite unusual for Next Gen. And Cirroc, I don't know how much handheld was used on Deep Space. Not much, I think. Maybe
not much, but sometimes.
Yeah, I think Marvin liked carrying the camera, so if he was doing it, he might as well do it. There was a lot of sort of movement in the shots. There's one scene where LeVar literally steps into his close-up, which is not all that usual. And then you have when sort of the emergency strikes at the end, you have extreme close-ups of the characters to sort of get sort of in their face, which is great. There are quite a number of observation lounge scenes, and if you look at them, all of them are shot differently. So, which is a pretty damn good feat, because that set was used so many times, and you often see the same sort of singles and two shots and what have you, and it looks very, very static. And I think here it certainly didn't. So at least visually it was appealing, and certainly the idea of the Iconians and the gateway was picked up again, and it's been talked about, of course. But if you leave your brain out the door and don't think about it too much, you can be entertained for 42 minutes. But again, I think it's kind of 7.6 is a little high for this. I think it's just it's kind of a middling episode that's decent for the second season of Next Gen, and better stuff is yet to come.
Yeah, 7.6 was a little surprising to some of us, I think. Thank you very much, Jason.
And Jason, I always leave my brain at the door.
Yeah, that's a good rule for everybody listening to this show, by the way. Don't
Keep your brain
expect
at the
much.
door.
Just enjoy. Which does not reflect on how we feel about Allison Leach Hyde. Put your brain back in. That was not a lead into Allison. What's up, Allison? How are you today? What do you think of this one?
Well, it's always great hanging out with you guys. Highlight of my day. So, what do I think of this episode? It's entertaining. I have, things I really like, things that, you do take the brain out and let it go because there's some plot holes, sure. But I like that we get more of Picard's personality. He's joking, he's being more fun, even though it's a dangerous situation that they're in. So I really liked that because it's nice to see him a little bit more human. And I love Geordi in the turbo lift, throwing himself around. It's so much fun. I'm like, go LeVar. So enjoy that. And I love the scene where he's being electrocuted in engineering and Data flings him across the room and runs after him like, oh my God. So that's my favorite scene because it's, again, the buddies caring for each other and it's funny. And I always want funny because life is serious enough. Let's have more funny. So, and my favorite line I'm going to say goes to Picard. He says, at the end, well, number one, I can see why you want to keep the away missions to yourself. That's where the excitement is. So what's been happening here? Same old routine, I suppose. And the look on Riker and O'Brien's face is like, no, what? You were just on a Romulan ship. What are you talking about? So those are the things that I really like about the episode. But yeah, it's a middling episode.
Yeah, fun scene. Good seeing O'Brien, of course, too. Also, great seeing Matt Boardman, first name The. What'd you think of this one?
I always like this one. I think it's fun. Is it character driven? No. I mean, this is I don't know if you would call it a filler episode. It's one of those episodes that we get because we have, we don't think we get a full 26 this season, but I always enjoy it. I don't know. I love ships, and so we get a little bit of ship technobabble in there, and I'm one of those guys who read the Next Generation technical manual from cover to cover, maybe a couple times. Okay, all right, 10. But I don't know. I like that, and I love the sense of pride that they feel in their ship. It's and the fact that now all of a sudden, like you said, their sister ship is having this issue and they don't know why that's happened. I could feel that sense of like dread, like, oh my goodness, what's going on here? I love that we get introduced to the Iconians. This was a fun one for me to work on in the remastered. We got to do a few things working with Dan Curry, who the Iconian exterior matte painting, we got to enhance that a little bit over the original version of it. So that was fun. And one of the things Allison brought up, Geordi flying around the turbo lift, which cracks me up. I would have loved to have been there the day that they filmed that, to watch LeVar like rolling around that set. And then I love when the door opens and he gets tossed out onto the bridge and rolls down the ramp there. I don't know why that makes me laugh every single time. And then to me, this is such a cool, that they included this later on, and I don't know if it was intentional, but maybe it was. But when Riker makes the comment, if possible, could somebody get me a couple of rocks that we could throw at the Romulans? And then flash forward to Picard season 3, when he tosses the freaking asteroid at the Shrike, and Beverly's like, well, did you just throw a rock at them? And he's like, you're damn right I did. And that, to me, every single time I'm like, oh yeah, he finally got to throw his rock. So but yeah, I love it. There's more that I could say. I'll save it, but overall, this is, it doesn't advance anything. It doesn't give us any really character driven stuff, but I don't know. I find it a fun episode to watch.
Mm-hmm. Great stuff. Matt Boardman, first name V. Thank you very much. What's up, Anna Post? How are you today? What'd you think of this one?
I'm well. I am sort of all over the map on this one. Like, I think it can make good points, but it does things. I don't know. I have to think about things. Like the first being, they finish a conversation about how the ship randomly opened doors out of an airlock and lost 18 people, but it's a little premature to start evacuating any women and children. I'm like, you literally just said the ship randomly like shoved people out into space. That one seemed wrong. And also, do ships just automatically download like airdrop logs to each other as soon as they come into contact, or are they up in the cloud? Because the ship blew up. You couldn't have like downloaded the logs afterwards to see what happens. So they must have just airdropped as soon as they came into contact. Like, how do they do they just automatically transfer?
It's a space drop because there's no air. But
yeah, space drop. The
air and darkness.
I know they mention the Iconians in future Trek, but this episode always sort of reminds me of the TOS All Our Yesterdays, because they're portals in buildings as opposed to like Guardians of Forever, which is out in the middle of nowhere. Because that one had the portals in the library that kept sending people to different places, and not knowing if you can come back. So I wondered if there had been, sort of an idea off of that original episode. I think my favorite line in the entire thing is when Geordi just says, "Thanks, Data," from the floor after he gets thrown in Data's life. Does his whole spiel. He's just like, "Yeah, thanks."
That was good.
Yeah.
And then I thought it was an interesting take on the traditional, like, oh, we think this is a nice space-loving, ancient civilization, like, per se, the Mayan. And then we're like, oh no, they were really conquerors or warlike or, had a little bit more brutality than we originally thought. And they kind of had the Iconians as the reverse, where they're like, everybody's calling them conquerors. And then they're like, oh, well, maybe we misunderstood them. And it was people's fear that started calling them conquerors, because they wiped them out and they won, so they could write history however they want, which is a cool concept. But at the same time, today sort of feels a little wrong to have labeled someone conquerors and be like, oh no, they're okay, really. Like, they weren't hurting anyone. It feels like the whole Columbus debate a little bit. What constitutes a conqueror or not. And just as a slightly off-color comment about Geordi being promoted, if you ever notice, there is a common thread to all of the people that we see promoted in Star Trek, which I don't know is on purpose or if anyone else has noticed, but Geordi gets promoted, Sisko gets promoted, Tuvok gets promoted, Burnham gets promoted, and technically now Uhura has been promoted. Take it as you will.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I don't know why you can't start at the beginning, but apparently you're the only people getting promoted.
Food for thought, everybody. Name other people that have been promoted in the comments below, if you can think of any. Jed Thompson is also here. What's up, Jed? What did you think of this episode? And how are you? Good to see you again.
I'm well. Thank you very much. A quick shout out to Malissa for this awesome T-shirt, by the way.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I like this episode. But you guys know this. I sit here and I've heard everybody here, and I'm like, I'm getting so much more intuition from all of you, or knowledge, and you're all looking at it from your own perspectives, and it's so awesome. And I'm just here kind of going, eating the popcorn, watching this episode, going, I love this episode. I don't know why. It is fluff. It is not deep, and I'm like, yep, you have a great point there. You have a great point there. Yep, I didn't see that. And I'm just going, nope. Yeah, I'm the guy this episode was written for. And so I enjoyed it. A couple of quick things that I really I noticed. First of all, just kind of riff off of what you were just saying a tiny bit here. I think it's great that the captain of the Yamato was black. Equal standing to Picard. They're long term. This is 1989. So this is going back 30 plus years. And I just think that it was awesome to see that, and his performance was really, really nice. And I also noticed that, and I really appreciated that as we're going through the seasons here, and we're 35, 36 or 7 episodes in, the cast is becoming much more comfortable with themselves, with the characters. And of course, this is only season 2, but I just really enjoy, the repartee that's happening, and just they seem more relaxed and comfortable. I really like that. And I'm going to keep some of this stuff for later, but I liked this, and I know somebody else mentioned this. Like, it had a little bit of everything. You've got ships, you've got archaeology, you've got aliens, you've got ancient aliens, you have pretty much the only thing you didn't have was romance, at least not that I could remember. So I just liked it. It was just a little bit of everything. But I want to reiterate my first point, which was it's so great being this group, because you all are looking at it from different perspectives. Some of it's very technical. Some of you want ships. Some of you want super, let's get character driven. I just love that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We feel the same way about you, Jed. You bring such a cool, fun element. Hopefully we can see you more in the future. Looking forward to that. However, everybody, it's Jake's final take. Any final thoughts from this episode, Cirroc? What do you think? Did you like it?
Yeah, it wasn't bad. There were elements that I liked. I'm going to highlight a couple of things that I thought were, thoughts that crossed my mind when I was watching the episode. One of them was the line that Picard used when he said China was a myth until Marco Polo. And it stood out to me because China being mentioned in a television show, I thought is kind of advanced, as we have now seen China rise in the world as a global superpower. For them to get a mention in this episode in '89, I thought it was pretty ahead of its time. They've actually mentioned China now before. This is, if I'm not mentioned, this is the second time on this show. And also Marco Polo, who wrote the most detailed chronicles of his experience in China in 1271, he was actually greeted and welcomed by the emperor named, and I'm going to butcher his name, but Kublai Khan.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought it was interesting that Marco Polo has a reference to Khan, and we see that name being recycled later on down the future. The other last take I want to say is a reference was made to the artifact that Captain Donald Varley had, and that artifact in his log was referred to as a galactic Rosetta Stone. And I thought there's a very big reference there that wasn't fully flushed out. I would have liked to see how this particular artifact was a galactic Rosetta Stone. We know that the Rosetta Stone was instrumental in kind of deciphering language and helping us understand stuff that we did not know. What did this artifact decipher, and how did it unlock things that we don't know? And I would have liked to explore that concept a little bit more. And so, those are my final takes. I'll leave the rest for the things left unsaid.
Great stuff. Sounds like a few people are thinking maybe without the Romulans and just focusing more on the Iconians and the Rosetta Stone and all that kind of stuff, maybe it would have been less exciting, but maybe more interesting. Who knows? Everybody, thanks so much for joining us. Malissa Longo, Chris McGee, TJ Jackson Bay out in Missouri, Carrie Schwent, Eve England, Faith Howell, Mai live in Tokyo, Marcia Classic Schreier, Jason the Outrageous Oaken, who's like, is he going to call me that forever? I hope not. Allison Leach Hyde, Jed Thompson, on a post with the new cadet, and the Matt Boardman for myself, Cirroc Lofton, Malissa Longo, Mr. Aaron Eisenberg. Thank you all very much for joining us. We will see you next time. And until then, always remember the seventh rule. Actually, Faith's got a cadet right there, too.
Yeah.